Advising Academy. From applications to admissions, an overview of the college application process. My name is Mitzi Holland, and I'm the director of the Kentucky Advising Academy. And I'm joined today by several special guests who will share some important information about the college application process. As people are joining, I would like for you in the chat to drop your name, your title, the school or organization that you are representing, and then your favorite summer activity. I know some of the summer activities may have come to an end with school starting, but still we'd like to hear about what you did this summer that was your absolute favorite thing. So we'll give everyone just a couple of minutes to drop that into chat, and then we will get on with our webinar. So as we work through our agenda for today, we will give a brief overview of the Kentucky Advising Academy. Then we will have our panel discussion. I will share a little information about some Kentucky Advising Academy resources. We will talk about how you can stay connected to our work. And at the end, we will ask that you complete a very short evaluation. And that is how we will be able to award your ELA or Frisky certificate for today. I just want to share a little bit of background in case you have not been able to join us in the past. The Kentucky Advising Academy is designed to support educators serving in advising roles. And the goal of Kentucky Advising Academy is to support educators so that students can have a successful transition from their secondary education to their desired career. And we do this by creating resources, by providing professional development, both virtual and in person, and then giving opportunities to collaborate and partner between secondary schools, post-secondary institutions, and or employers. We are going to now go ahead and talk or give our panelists an opportunity to talk to you all and answer questions that you may have. In just a moment, I will give our panelists an opportunity to introduce themselves, but just want to give you a little background about how this webinar will work. We do have a few questions that are prepared, but this is your time, and we want to make sure that you have the questions that you need answered during this webinar. So if at any time during the webinar you have a question, feel free to drop it in the chat. I will be monitoring the chat, as well as Kelly Norman, who is a program consultant for the Kentucky Advising Academy. And we will get those questions to the appropriate person. If you do not feel comfortable or would rather ask that question in person, we certainly welcome that as well. And you can feel free to raise your hand emoji and we will call on you. If for some reason we don't get all the questions answered before our time ends today, we will be sure to take those questions down and follow up with an email with answers to that. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now, and I'm going to give our panelists a time or an opportunity to introduce themselves. So let's start with Rachel. Rachel is representing South Central Kentucky Community and Technical College. So Rachel, if you will tell us a little bit about yourself, then we'll go to Mackenzie with Kia, Hannah with Lindsey Wilson, and then Jenny with the University of Louisville.
Thanks, Mitzi. Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Finn. I'm an academic advisor here at SkyCTC. Goodness. Previously, I was the recruiter here at the college for several years before that. So I definitely have some good experience and a handle on our admissions process, what students are needing when they come in and register for fall classes. And I know this time of year, your seniors probably haven't thought about this just yet, but here in the next few weeks, couple of months, they're going to really start asking those questions. So I'm happy that everybody's here today and we can start answering those questions before you get them.
Hey, friends. Is it me next?
Yes,
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, Rachel, Mackenzie, Hannah, then Jenny. I just did it in alphabetical order.
Hey friends, it's Mackenzie Massey. I work with KIA, Kentucky Higher Education Assistance Authority. I'm so excited to see how many people are on here and really just to hopefully answer the questions that you have before we really get into the heart of the school year.
Hello, everybody. My name is Hannah Peck. I'm the Associate Director of Admission at Lindsey Wilson College. And I've been in admissions for the majority of time that I have been at Lindsey Wilson since 2012. And so I hope to answer your all's questions today and provide insights on the college application process as we start the school year.
Hi, you all. My name is Jenny Sawyer. I'm the Associate Provost and Executive Director of Admissions at the University of Louisville. It's great to be here this morning and to look and see that you all are from all across the state of Kentucky. I think every region of the state is represented today, and we're happy to share with you all some of our insights that we've gained over the years and help you have some things to pass on to your students as you work with them throughout the school year.
Thank you, ladies. We want to jump right in and we want to start talking about the college admissions process, specifically the application process. And we know that this process can be somewhat overwhelming, especially for students and families who maybe are doing it for the first time. So I want us to spend some time today sharing information to assist counselors and others serving as advisors.
Thank you.
To better support students in this process. So we know that completing an application is what most consider step one, but I want to back things up a little bit and discuss some things that could occur before the application itself. And I want to address some items that could help prepare students for the application process. So I want us to think about just for a minute, what are some important considerations that counselors should share with students regarding specifically like letters of recommendation, participation in clubs or organizations, extracurricular activities, and how do these things impact the admissions process? So Jenny, I'll start with you and give you an opportunity to answer this question.
Sure. And I want to say today I'm not representing the University of Louisville. I'm representing really our four-year publics, and the four-year public admissions directors, we meet sometimes almost monthly and talk about, how do we remove barriers? How are we working together? How our process is different. So, at the four-year publics in Kentucky, most decisions are made now based on the high school transcript. Okay. There are situations and cases where we do look at extracurricular activities. We might look at, we call ours our student involvement resume that gives us a broader picture of the student. We may look at letters of recommendation, particularly when students have had a struggle at some point in time, or there's something special that they want to call out. So most of those things at the four-year publics are really used for scholarships. And it is important that students begin to build their resume as early as the 9th grade and be thinking strategically about their service, their leadership opportunities, their activities outside the classroom, whether or not that be in their local church or in their community service in their community or service to their school. And for every single one of the public universities, we do have some rather significant scholarship opportunities that require all of those things and that are very competitive. And so for students to really be looking at the affordability piece and the scholarship piece of it, they really do need to be thinking about that. And then the other place where those do come into effect is a student who maybe transfers into your district. Maybe doesn't have, has a little bit of struggle a semester or two. Maybe they have some family things, life happens to them, and they're still a really strong student and they need someone to write a letter and really advocate for them. I had a letter this week for a student who was enrolling late from one of our local agencies, and it really addressed that person's soft skills. It addressed that person's grit. It addressed their resilience. And the thing that I would say to you about letters of recommendation is tell us things that we don't see other places. So don't tell us about their grades. Don't tell us about things that are going to be in other things. Tell us the things about the person, the things that are going to help us decide that this is the person we want to be a part of our university community. And that sometimes you want to tell us when the numbers really don't tell the whole story about how a student can excel and be successful. The other advice I would give to students when they're thinking about letters of recommendation is if they can find someone to write a letter of recommendation that has had a sustained relationship with them. And particularly for if you're talking about issues with grades, if you can find a teacher who's had a student maybe twice, once when a student was struggling, and then later when a student has really kind of overcome those problems, and they can really talk about how now they're really applying themselves, they're taking advantage of resources in the schools and things like that.
Thank you, Jenny. Do any of the others have anything that you want to add to that? Maybe that's specific to your organization or your school? I know Jenny, like I said, is representing, or like she said, is representing public, but we have Hannah representing the private institutions and Rachel with KCTCS. And then Mackenzie, I saw your hand go up, so go ahead and add to that.
I always tell students to keep the notes section of their phone. We all have this note section where we keep our passwords, different things like that. But in the notes section of their phone, to keep every single thing that they've done from the summer before their freshman year to the time that they graduate. It's a hard ask. I know it's extremely difficult, but anything from going to church camp, doing something at the library, doing something with senior citizens. That way, when you're writing a letter of recommendation, one, you can speak on the student's character and what they do outside of school and maybe outside of athletics, but also for you to have a wide range of what to speak to. So always tell your students to be jotting down things kind of throughout the year, especially throughout those summer months, so you can kind of keep track of what they're doing outside of school.
I think that's a great idea. And I want to add one thing, and then Hannah, I'll give you an opportunity to speak. But as a former college and career counselor, I always appreciated it when students brought me like a little paper or form with some of the highlights. I mean, you know them as a student, but you don't necessarily know all the things that they've participated in. So Hannah?
On behalf of the private schools, I was just going to sort of second what Jenny said. I do think a lot of our schools are now looking at transcripts to make those sort of admissions decisions outside of our selective admissions colleges in the state that are private, such as like Center or Transy or something like this. So this is not technically a universal answer, but for the majority, that is where the admissions decision is coming from. But again, many of the privates are also going to have competitive scholarships that will require resumes, letters of recommendation, and that sort of thing. And I definitely agree with the both of you too, that it is helpful for students to provide some writing points to those writing their recommendation letters. And so for instance, like our most competitive scholarship, I always tell students to, as Jenny said, share what is not in your transcript, is not anywhere else that we would find. And honestly, letters of recommendation can hold strong weight. Our most competitive scholarship, typically students are 30 and above ACT that get that. But a couple years ago, we had a student with a mid-range ACT. It was still a great score, but she actually made it very far in the review process because the committee said that it was the strongest recommendation letters that they had ever reviewed on a student. And they really painted a holistic picture of her.
That's awesome. And you don't really realize the power of some of those things. And that is very true. You all shared some really great insight to that. Rachel?
And every oh, I'm so sorry. I
No,
was just
you
gonna
are
say
fine.
every student applying for a competitive scholarship is a smart young person. They have high test scores, they have great grades. So as the as the recommendation writer, you're helping to set that student apart and what makes them a unique person.
Rachel, did you want to add something on behalf of KCTCS?
Yeah, so I agree with Hannah. With KCTCS, we are not looking at letters of recommendation and things like that for admittance into our colleges. We only use like ACT scores, GPA, test scores, that type of stuff. But where it really does come to factor is like what Hannah said in those scholarships. So lots of local scholarships that Sky CTC accepts, or even Sky CTC scholarships in general, have the option to submit those letters of recommendations and those, extracurriculars that they've been involved at, and that, our scholarship committee, I used to serve on that committee. So we review those, we look at those, we award points on how active the student is outside of just going to school. And that can really make or break in terms of funding for students. And then we also at the KCTCS level have a lot of students who work on campus through federal work study, and filling out those job applications. All of those extra things they're doing goes into that interview process. That's something to highlight on a resume. That's something to highlight in your interview when you're working with the admissions department, that, hey, I have experience working with a lot of different people because I did this thing in high school. I was a leader on, SGA in my high school, or whatever it could be. And that really speaks to a lot of that as well.
Thank you. I know we have several questions that have been dropped in the chat. And originally I thought we might get through like 3 or 4 questions that I had already prepared and then go to the chat. But I feel like some of these questions are very timely. So Kelly, do you mind coming off mute and sharing some of those questions, and we'll get answers to those really quickly before we move on to our next pre-prepared question.
Absolutely. And the first one has already been answered by Rachel, but I will give her a chance to maybe speak to her response. But the question was for the CTC advisor: is it possible for a high school senior to apply to several CTCs at the same time?
So the answer is unfortunately no. We share one application for all 16 colleges, but it only allows the student to pick one KCTCS school at a time. We don't currently have a way for them to go in and check a box for multiple different locations. So if a student applies, we'll say Sky CTC first, they change their mind, maybe they want to explore what Bluegrass has in Lexington or JCTC in Louisville or any of those locations. If a student applies to those locations, it will change what we call their home college to that other KCTCS school. So they can only technically apply to one at a time. However, it's an easy change to a different one if need be. So if a student applies to Sky, explores Bluegrass, decides again back on Sky, we can switch that in their system, no problem. It's quick, easy to do. In our area, we have a ton of students that inadvertently apply to West Kentucky Community and Technical College, because they think it's associated with WKU, which we share a town with. So they think West Kentucky is the same as Sky because of Western. So we switch that home college in the system all day, every day. It's quick and easy if your student needs to switch that around.
Thank you. What GPA do you recommend for admissions? And again, this could be for any of our panelists.
So for the 4-year publics, that really does vary somewhat. But, so at the University of Louisville, particularly on test optional students or students of which we mask their test scores, if we really are typically looking for a 3.0 or above if we're going to admit you without test scores. We may go down slightly a little bit with other information or with a pattern of grades, with a rigor of curriculum, things of that nature. So that's a tough question to answer. I think, cumulative GPA questions are just hard because there's so much more of a story on a high school transcript about what courses people took, what grades they got in certain courses. And about 50% of us are making our decisions. About 50% of our decisions are being made without any consideration of test scores. And so on each one of those, we're really digging in and looking at the high school transcript and those course choices and those courses, those grades and individual courses. I hate to avoid the question, but it's just it's all over the board. It's all over the board.
I'll second Jenny on that. As the private institutions, it's just going to vary institution to institution. I hate to also dodge the question, but I would check obviously the admissions pages on each institution that a student is interested in. Now that there has been the trend of all of our colleges going to a test optional admissions policy for the most part, everyone has varied. At Lindsey Wilson, ours mirrors very closely to what Jenny was talking about. If you have a 3.0 or above, then you are considered for the admission without the test score. There is a ability to be accepted with lower than that, but it hinges on some core content classes that we will look at what grades that you received in core content areas during the junior or senior year. But it certainly does vary. But I always encourage students to really be striving in the 2.75 and above range. I think is really a good place to try to be pushing yourself, especially if you've had a student that maybe has struggled as a result of if that was COVID or what have you, that's impacted their GPA. And maybe they think, oh, a 3.8 is not attainable. But for me at that point, maybe they're hinging around a 2.5, telling them to really push to get above the 2.75. And as Jenny said, when we look at the transcript holistically, we can see that trajectory that they really turned on maybe the last year and a half of high school, and that can really help in their admissions decision. How they finished is important, I think.
Yeah, just a couple other points about grades that you could use. One of the research and statistical points is that research shows that a student typically gets about a half of a point lower when they go to college than they did in high school. So if you're looking at a student with a 2.5, the stats would say that then they would only get a C average. They would only get a 2.0 in college, which for many academic programs in colleges, you're not able to then move into certain majors or things of that nature with those kinds of grades. The other thing I would say is just the importance of junior grades. That's the first place our eyes go is junior grades. And then many times we're asking students for first semester senior grades. And so those grades are very important because they really show more of where the student is as far as their attention to school and to their grades. It talks about how they manage their assignments, their participation in class. Those are the things that we see when we see good grades. We see showing up. When you see A's, there's probably a good attendance rate behind those. There's turning things in on time. There's all those things that tell us things about a student's ability to manage and juggle and manage their time and study skills outside of school. So I think those are the things when you're talking about to students about their grades. One bad semester should not impact anything. We really look a lot at patterns of grades.
Jenny, to follow up on that, somebody in the chat asked, the statistic about the half point lower GPA is helpful to know. Do you have a reference handy for that?
It's a research point that ACT does on a regular basis.
Okay, thank you. Hannah, I'm going to throw a question over to you real quick, and then of course anyone else feel free to chime in. But when looking at transcripts, are AP and dual credit courses looked at in the same way?
Well, for an admissions decision, I would say yes, like Jenny said, the pattern of grade. Typically, though, a student with AP or dual credit is typically also a high achieving student. So usually their GPA is a strong GPA. I would say where those particularly come into consideration is on a holistic review during maybe a competitive scholarship application. Those certainly make a difference in those types of decisions. I know for speaking more isolated for our most competitive scholarship, the review committee, yes, a student might have a 4.0, but if their senior year, it appeared that they were just taking all elective credit, not challenging or pushing themselves, that's going to make a difference in the decision that they make. So certainly the AP and dual credit courses, I think, do hold a lot of weight, maybe more so outside the admissions decision, but beyond. Now, I think where you could see it in the admissions decision is if perhaps a student didn't perform as well in an AP class. Typically, a lot of schools will weight those courses, but I know some have gone away from the weighted scale, but that may be something the admissions committee considers. Okay, they challenge themselves. Yes, their GPA was not where it was previously, but look at the rigor of their courses.
We look at AP and dual credit in the same way. I will let you know that we're the only institution who, for their scholarships that we give without test scores, we do evaluate the rigor of a student's transcript. And our test optional scholarships go to students with good grades. So in Kentucky, it's a 3.5 weighted GPA or higher, and students who have what we refer to in our messaging as significant AP or dual credit work. And that is done within the context of the offerings of your school. So I would encourage you that if you have not done a slate.org profile of your school, to think about creating a slate.org account and putting your profile in there, so that as schools, private schools, public schools, schools outside of Kentucky are looking at your transcripts, they can easily see what are the offerings that your school has. And so they're evaluating that student in the context of your school. The last little thing I'm going to ask that some of you all consider doing, on AP courses, exactly how your school's AP courses are doing. You know what your pass rate is for all of those AP schools. I would encourage your school, if you're not doing this already, to work with your major partners for your dual credit programs to look about getting grade data back to see how your students are doing in their after they leave you, the students who have taken dual credit courses. Because I do think we do not have the same evaluation measures to assess the quality of our dual credit programs that we do through the College Board with the AP program.
And I just want to add really quick, because I was one of the students who was an AP student, and I did really well in the class, but I didn't pass the exam. So in terms of coming in with credit, with college credit, those students do have to pass the AP exam. Passing the AP class is very important, especially for transcript purposes. But they do have to pass that AP exam in order to get any type of college credit. Just in case you didn't know that, because that wasn't something that I knew going from high school to college. So had I known that, I would have been able to take dual credit, done really well in the class. But because getting that credit hinged on that passing the exam, I unfortunately wasn't able to. So just to kind of throw that in there.
And what Mackenzie said too, just as an aside, colleges accept at different scores as well. So be mindful of what scores are actually accepted for credit at each institution.
But keep in mind that in the state of Kentucky, any 3, 4, or 5 has to be accepted. Okay, in the state of Kentucky, that is state legislation. Okay. The other thing for you to know about AP versus dual credit is your students that are in AP courses that are on free and reduced lunch do get bonuses attached to their keys money. And unfortunately, dual credit courses do not have any type of bonus attached to them. So if a student is in a position to take an AP course, particularly if they're a low-income student who qualifies for and is eligible to take AP courses, there are some real financial benefits for them doing AP versus dual credit if you believe they're going to be a type of student who could get a 3, 4, or 5.
And in terms of getting that AP bonus, even if your entire school district is reduced price lunch, the student specifically has to qualify for free or reduced price lunch in order to get the AP bonus. However, they only have to qualify for 1 year. So they don't have to be free reduced price lunch for 4 years, but they do have to qualify at least 1 year in order to get that bonus.
Rachel, do you have anything to add about AP versus dual credit?
It's so different with KCTCS and how that's reviewed. We accept the AP scores. All the student has to do is share the College Board results with us so we can count it for class. Like Miss Jenny said, 3, 4, and 5, those are going to come in as college credit. We ask that the students try to send those in as soon as they can get them in, because that could change a schedule potentially. If they've got AP US history, they don't necessarily have to take another heritage with us. Dual credit is really big within the KCTCS network right now. I think we have a lot of students that are coming in. I know Sky specifically, our dual credit is vast. That's the easiest way. I think students can earn some college credit, like Miss Mackenzie. A lot of students take the AP courses, but then maybe don't take the test or don't do as hot on the test as they expected. And that doesn't necessarily, just taking that AP class doesn't necessarily count for that college credit. So that dual credit is going to be helpful. in terms of admissions at Sky and how those are evaluated, it doesn't necessarily affect their admissions at all. It really comes down to then, of course, schedule, how many classes they have left in a particular program. That DC to finish scholarship that Sky CTC has, you know, those type of things are really going to where it's going to come into play more so than the admission side of things.
I know we have several questions still in the chat, but I noticed one question that aligns very well to a follow-up question that I had. So I wanted to, and Hannah, we'll start with you on this. We've had some discussion about the ACT and knowing that ACT is optional for admissions for most colleges and universities, but the ACT still has some importance and benefits in certain instances. So Hannah, if you would start us off with speaking to why the ACT is still important or still can matter in the application process, and then any advice that you may have for advisors in this area. And then, of course, we'll give the others the opportunity to share as well.
We spoke about this at conference last year at the Kentucky Association of College Admissions Counseling conference. If you're not a member, shameless plug. It's a connection of high school counselors and college counselors, and we share and exchange information. But anyway, I see Jenny smiling. Yes. Anywho, it's a great conference, but we talked about this last year because there's just a lot of misconception around test scores, standardized test scores at this time. And it's very confusing, as I mentioned earlier, and high school counselors voice their frustrations of it really not being clear what test optional means, because it means something different at every institution. Some places you have to request to be reviewed as a test optional student. Some schools now are just, as they receive your transcript, if you meet the GPA minimum, you're accepted. And some are ever changing. Ours, you used to have to request to be reviewed as test optional. We changed ours last year to a subset of GPAs and conditions that would accept you. So it really does vary. And I will be honest, being that this is still new for a lot of us, I think sometimes the information gets a little muddy in how we disseminate that information, and that's just a full transparency. I don't think that we've all done the best job at it, my own institution included. And I think that as we hear your all's concerns, we're trying to get better and make it more transparent, because we want to create access for all students and what your students actually have to do to be accepted at our institutions. So with that being said, though, the ACT and SAT, while a lot of our schools will, as we've mentioned, as U of L mentioned what their GPA requirement is. I mentioned ours. But even though there are ways for students to be accepted now in many instances without a standardized test, there is still a place for a standardized test. And that's something that really became evident in our conversation that we had last year at conference. That a lot of students don't understand. A lot of students hear test optional and they think there's no reason for me to take the ACT serious or take it again. If I took it the first time and I took a nap during the junior ACT, I'm not going to take it again because it doesn't matter. Where it does matter is a lot of times in maximizing your scholarship earning potential at your respective institutions. Yes, test optional scholarships are lower, but test optional scholarships are offered at most institutions, but they're going to be on the lower end. Your ACT is usually going to make those incrementally larger. At ours, it really goes up as you increase your ACT score. Additionally, they're going to be used for class placement in a lot of core content areas. So for instance, the subscore of math is often used for placement in your respective math course. Your subscore in English will be used for your composition courses. If you don't have those, you may have to take whatever the developmental course is, or take an Accuplacer exam or another standardized test to show what level of course that you need to go into. Every school is a little bit different on that. So there certainly is still a place, and I really encourage students to continue to take the AC, and it's a conversation I'm having to have with students as I go into the schools. No, you should take the ACT again. Look at the schools you're looking at. because we want to maximize all students' earning potential to make college as affordable as possible. So that's really why I encourage students to continue to take it. And they really don't know that it's utilized in those two areas. And I don't ever want anything to be a surprise. And I'm certain Jenny can speak more to this because they have entrance criteria to each of their respective schools. So whatever the admission criteria may be for just general admission may be different than the speed school for engineering. So that's what I have to share about it, and I'll just pass it off to whoever wants to speak next.
I mean, I would agree with everything Hannah said. Test scores can make a huge difference in scholarships. Test scores can make it, they're significant when it comes to placement. I would encourage you to tell every student to ask the schools that they're applying to, is there any downside for me to submitting test scores? At the publics in Kentucky, there is no downside to sending all of your test scores. And most of us use a system that allows us to mask our test scores. So if a student's test scores do not meet our minimums, a counselor cannot tell if the student submitted test scores or didn't submit test scores. But then as we have conversations with students and we do counseling sessions with students about them getting ready for their freshman year, those test scores can be seen by us and can add a lot of value to the conversations about what they need to be doing in their senior year to get ready to move into the program that they're getting into, what opportunities might be available for them. They just help guide the conversation. And so, you know, the test scores that the students take, and I know some of you all do some testing with a pre-ACT in their sophomore year, and then the junior test scores, those really can serve as a point of information for the student to really see where they are. The college readiness data on reading and mathematics is still very strong as far as predicting success, particularly in STEM programs, predicting readiness to be reading at a certain level, to be able to handle some general education courses. So even though there have been so many benefits to being test optional, I love it. Just yesterday, I met with a student who had a 32 on the ACT, never sent us to it, was a sophomore, and is now realizing that they would have $9,000 more aid a year. That is $36,000. And they just thought, I don't need to send the test score. So make sure they're asking every single school, is there any downside? Because in my mind, at the 8 publics, there are only upsides to sending your test scores. There are no downsides. So send us scores. It's also one of the best ways to show an institution that you're interested in them. And you'll probably start to get better communication about programs that are available, special visit days, things of that nature. It's one of the easiest ways to show an institution that you're interested in them.
Thank you all, ladies. I know, Kelly, we've got several questions in the chat, so I'm going to give you an opportunity to ask a couple of those because a lot of these questions are very similar to some that we had already talked about, previously. So go ahead, Kelly.
Okay, Rachel, I'm going to start with you on this one. How does the admissions process look different or similar for students who are homeschooled versus those who have attended a public or private high school?
So for SkyCTC specifically, it doesn't change anything. Once a student applies, we just ask for that transcript. So whether it's a public high school, private high school, online high school, homeschool, we take it that. And it doesn't really matter where they've gone from. Where you look at GPA a lot of times for class placement. So the actual high school itself, what type of high school it is, doesn't necessarily matter. We're able to validate those transcripts from homeschools a lot differently than we used to. So even if it's homeschool, but it's actually at your home, you're not necessarily using like a third party, like a university or like there's the Phoenix one and those type of things. We can add that student over. Worst case scenario, the student may have to do some placement testing with us if there's not any placement scores of any kind that come with that transcript. But we really typically try not to create any barriers when it comes to the type of high school or transcript a student is bringing in.
Do any of our other panelists have follow-up to that or additional information?
I think in most cases, our homeschooled students that's looked upon very favorably. It does become a little bit harder to know of what about the school and about the rigor of the classes and things of that nature. So I do think it is more difficult unless a homeschool student has been taking dual credit. It is more difficult to be able to provide them with some scholarship opportunities that are outside the realms of test scores.
Our next question from the chat is about the Common App. And the question really is, how do you prefer students to apply? Do you prefer them to use the Common App or direct admission?
I can kind of answer this because I don't have to talk about public or private or KCTCS. I can talk about all of them, and then I can talk about none of them. So Common App is extremely handy just because you can apply to multiple different colleges and universities at one time. However, as someone who came from college admissions into now my Kia role, I think that it's extremely important for students to utilize the application days that their high schools have, because then they're able to connect with their admissions counselor or whoever is there representing the school. And I think that something that has changed over the past 15 years, these admissions counselors are really in the field, and they're also really trying to create relationships with the students that are applying. So Common App is great, but direct admissions is kind of like my personal preference. Again, just me, because it is something that they can either hand in, or it's something that they can complete. It's something that they'll get an email with their registration code, or with, like their login information. So Common App is great, especially for students who want to apply to a lot of out-of-state schools, because, in terms of fees, it can get kind of pricey. But if you're applying to a school that doesn't have a fee, kind of direct admissions is my personal way to go. And I mean, that's up for argument anywhere, but again, just personal preference.
Any follow-up to that? If not, we will move into our next question. I'm trying to monitor the time and want to make sure that we do get to cover all the things that we need to. I'm going to skip one of my questions and come back to it in just a minute. But Mackenzie, I know Kia has a lot of outreach things going on. You have counselors in all the schools across Kentucky. And I know you all do a lot to support the college application and admissions process. So could you speak to some of the most impactful Kia events or activities that you all have going on to support this work?
Well, in terms of time, I don't know if we have enough, because this is something I can talk about for literally forever. Something that Kia has is the KY Goes to College initiative. I know that in my territory, all of my high schools are a part of it because I basically force them to be. But that involves college application days that can look different across the board. So as an outreach counselor, I can go in and assist with a college application day. Like I said before, I don't have to pull for any specific school. I try to really pull for our in-state schools, so our schools that are in the state of Kentucky, just because in terms of scholarships and grants, that's a lot of what Kia does. And those opportunities for Kentucky residents is extremely important to me. But college application days can be so much fun. Hannah, God love her, she has been a part of so many Kia college application days. I might do things a little differently in my territory. This is my pump up time. This is my time to play Ozzy Osbourne or AC/DC to really get the kind of the vibes going in the mood set, and really get students kind of just excited for college applications. Also, you're not going to find me, and I think I can speak for almost everybody at Kia. I'm not going to sit down and tell a student that they have to apply to a four-year institution. if they want to apply to a 2-year, if they want to do any type of certification or diploma, that's less than 2 years. 4-year, if they want to apply in-state, if they want to apply for out-of-state colleges. College application days are welcome for all. And it can include, I try to include careers in that as well. If someone needs help with a resume, if somebody's like, you know what, Mackenzie, I really can't see myself in college. I hate it. I hate school. I want to do something different. That's really an opportunity to connect with your students and really kind of support what they deem successful. So college application days, if you're a part of that KY Goes to College initiative, I highly recommend, because your outreach counselor can assist in that a lot. I have a lot of new counselors that are starting, so I'm trying to kind of coordinate. If you are working with the high school, I will apply, or I will ask for colleges from all across the state to come. I know that Pike probably is not going to make it to Caverna's college application day because it's like a 4-hour drive. However, I'm going to extend that invitation. And sometimes colleges around the state will send things for your college application days. If they can't be there, they're more than happy to send information. They're more than happy to send mailers. I know that U of L wasn't able to make one of my college application days, but they had 6 applicants coming from that school. So they were actually able to set up a Zoom time where those students could come in and ask their questions, get to know the counselor. So whatever that kind of looks like for you and your students is kind of what your KIA outreach counselor is going to support. College application days are probably going to look different from Eastern Kentucky college application days. It's kind of an atmosphere that I want higher education going culture. So that's definitely one way that KIA can help. And also with that coordinating with reaching out to schools. If you have a KCC college compact or a Kentucky college coach in your school, we partner with them and we work very, very closely with them as well. So if you have a KCC in there, they can definitely help with that college application day as well. If you have any questions regarding we do 3 other initiatives with that KY Goes to College, please feel free to reach out anytime. If you want to plan your own college application day, I'm more than happy to help as well.
And Mackenzie, Susie has a question in the chat. If you don't care, if you could type a response to her about how do you get organized for those college application days? Do they sign up or just show up? So if you don't care to respond to that, I'm trying to watch the clock and I'm not trying to discount anyone's question by any means at all. But we only have 12 minutes left. And we have one more question that I feel like we need to give our panelists an opportunity to speak to. We do have lots of resources that I wanted to share with you all, but I'm going to do that via email. I will follow up with information about the resources. We have a new on-demand learning library, and we have a newly launched post-secondary advising framework. And these are all great resources to support you in the work that you are doing. But rather than take time away from our panel discussion, I will share those resources in an email. I do want to ask this last question and give everyone an opportunity to speak to this, because I feel like there may be different opportunities at different universities to support students in this. If a student really wants to apply, and Rachel, I'll start with you on this one because this kind of follows along with the question that we had discussed. But if a student really wants to apply, but he or she is just short of the admissions criteria, what suggestions or advice should a counselor give that student? And then, like I said, we'll start with you, but though I do want to give everyone an opportunity to speak to this question.
From a KCTCS standpoint, I would encourage that student to apply. Go ahead, submit the application where you can, complete what steps you can now. And then I would encourage that high school counselor, college and career coach maybe to partner with their college representative in their area. So if a student's applying to like Sky CTC, reach out to one of our recruiters or myself, and then work one-on-one with that person and that student on getting that student then caught up in where they need to be. You know, is it placement testing they need to schedule and submit? Is it a transcript? Is it the dual credit transcript from a different institution? Whatever it could be to help bring that student along. We definitely don't want the student to wait to apply to the last minute. You know, that stresses everybody out, not only the student, but then the college representative as we're trying to get them in at the last minute. But we also don't want the student to like discount themselves and say, well, I can't do it because I don't have this certain ACT scores, or I can't do it because my GPA in high school was a 1 point whatever. There are ways around that. There are ways to get that student to where their goal is and get them ready and on their pathway. So I always encourage the student to do what they can, apply, start the process, and then go from there. And, you know, there's help out there, there's resources out there. Anybody I've ever met that works in a student affairs, profession, we're begging to let students help, you know, like, let us help you, please. Like, we love to do it. That's what we're here for. I don't think anybody gets in this field and says, I hate to help people. That's not what we're here to do. So you know, as a college counselor, use your resources, make those phone calls, ask those questions, get those students connected early so that way they can get through that pathway.
Hannah, do you want to add anything? And then we'll let Jenny have an opportunity to wrap us up. And Mackenzie.
Sure. I would also encourage students to apply. A lot of times students do discount themselves without actually knowing the full picture. They may have never even looked online to see what an admissions requirement was. I have students often will tell me, oh, I don't want to tell you my test score, it's not good. And it's like a 19. Yeah, that's a good score, that sort of thing. And so I encourage students to, because at some schools, it may not be a no. I like to call it, it's a not right now. We do like to create pathways and opportunities for students. So for instance, it may be like at our school, if a student's GPA, it's just, as Jenny said, we don't want to put, I will say, let me put it this way. If a college says no, or particularly this is how we will do it at our institution, and I know many others like this, we are not saying a not right now out of any malice or anything like that. As stewards, we need to be making sure that students are able to do the work presented to them, because I never want a student to pay for or have to borrow money for something I knew up front that I didn't know that I knew that they weren't ready for. And I consider that something I take really seriously, because a student is trusting me to help them in this process. And I don't want to ever lead a student because maybe I'm trying to get one more number at our institution. And the colleagues I know across the state, they feel the same way. And so we really want to do what's in the best interest of the student. So if it's a not right now answer, it's in their best interest. And the not right now is we give them a path. Hey, not right now, but if you take 6 hours of college work at our local community colleges or over the summer or something of that nature, and you perform at this level, we'll reconsider you for admission, something of that nature. So I encourage students to apply, as Rachel said, so that we can guide them and have those type of conversations with them. And maybe it's a conversation where we say, hey, take the ACT score again. You're right on the cusp. Your ACT score might tip you over, or hey, work this semester and your GPA gets you to that threshold that you need to be.
Jenny, do you want to add anything? And then Mackenzie?
I would agree with Hannah. I do think that at the four-year publics, all of your students are going to find that they have a counselor, an admissions counselor that is assigned to their high school. And I think one of the best things they can do if they think they're kind of on the bubble is for them, not their parents, for them to reach out to that admissions counselor, schedule a time, have an honest conversation. Find yourself an advocate or someone that understands either to give you advice on what to do, or to give you, as Hannah said, that other pathway. We have full-time counselors, academic advisors that work at JCTC. We'll have a full-time academic advisor that works at ECTC starting in October. And so we work very closely with the community colleges and often refer students to the community college if we think that we're not the right place or they're not ready, or from an affordability standpoint, maybe. All of our admissions counselors have access to financial aid data, so they're able to have those full conversations with students about college readiness, about preparation for college, and also about how affordability fits into that picture of making a decision.
Thank you. Mackenzie, do you want to add anything before we move into our final wrap up?
Kia can help with some college and career exploration as well. If a student reaches out to their Kia outreach counselor and says, you know what, I don't really know what to do. I know that the staff of amazing humans that I work with are more than happy to sit down with that student and kind of assess something that's going to be realistic, something that is going to be something somewhere that they can be confident in. So whether that looks like an Ivy League, or if it looks like a state school, a public school, a private school, kind of anywhere that they want to go, kind of helping with them to work that plan. I love that Hannah said it's not a no, it's just a not right now. So kind of configuring a plan with that student, and success is going to look different for every student. So, if you have a student who has a 1.9 who really just want to make it to a 2.0, we are kind of trained on how to assist that student in getting where they want to go and something that they can attain. So just kind of reach out to your outreach counselor as well. And we work really close with a lot of the schools that you're seeing on the screen, all of the schools that you're seeing on the screen. And they are excellent as well. And your admissions counselors are really, I'm telling you, they're very much relationship focused now. So just kind of having students reach out, is this going to be possible to me? Shoot me straight, and asking all the questions that they need answered.
Thank you all so much. You all, this has been, in my opinion, some great conversation. I'm going to share my screen again and give you all an opportunity to see. Can you all see the evaluation slide there? Okay. So if you would, please take just a moment to either visit the bit.ly code that is on the screen, or scan the QR code, and take just a few minutes to complete this evaluation. We use your feedback to make our work and our offerings better. So we truly want to make sure that we are providing you with the support and the information that you all need to support the students. I will say that, in my opinion, like I said, this has been some tremendous and very valuable conversation. I truly, truly value everything that has been shared today, value all of our panelists, and appreciate you all taking time to be here, because I know that this is not a good time for you all. You all are in the first week of college and probably putting out fires all day long, and probably had several fires occur while you were on this webinar. So we truly appreciate you all taking time to be here with us. To our audience participants, we really appreciate the very insightful questions that you all asked. We do have a few questions that we had listed that we did not have time for. So if our panelists would maybe provide some answers, via email, I will share those out with you. Again, I also have several resources from the Kentucky Advising Academy that I wanted to share with you. I will follow up with an email with the slide deck that contains those resources, with links to all of those resources, a little background information. Also, I want to say that if you do need an ELA or Frisky certificate, you must complete this evaluation in order for us to send that to you, and we will send that via email. This webinar has been recorded, and it will be available probably within a week or so. We do have those available on YouTube. You can search Kentucky Advising Academy. And we also archive webinars on our toolkit. And the address for the toolkit, I believe Kelly is dropping in the chat. Again, we know you all are busy people, and we are just so grateful that you took an hour out of your day to spend with us and to have some great discussion around the college application process. We appreciate everyone being here, and we certainly hope you all have a wonderful school year. Thank you all, and we'll see you in September for our early post-secondary opportunities webinar. Thank you.